Yeah, it's fine. You can start.
So reflective essay 2, it's grade 2, English creative writing. So in the beginning of the lesson, we invoked principle 1, which says we learn or understand new things by relating them to what we already know. So it's a way of eliciting learners' prior knowledge, right? And
Yeah.
then this principle was addressed where the teacher engaged the learners in the classroom discussion about Christmas Day. So they had to say what they know about Christmas, how is it special to them, and how they celebrate it. So this was a way for the teacher to see if the learners can creatively and meaningfully tell a story from the beginning until the end.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the body of the lesson, we invoke cognition and emotions are intertwined. So whereby the teacher engaged learners through picture reading. So it was addressed in a way that where the teacher used a picture and created a story using that picture. So this was done by asking the learners to share what they think is happening in the picture before the teacher actually told them a story based on that. And then having them engage created positive emotions, which of course fostered learning. And then in the conclusion, we invoked learning requires attention and cognitive engagement. And then this was addressed where the learners were now expected to use the same picture to write down their own story. This means that the learners were supposed to apply their picture reading skills and tell their own story. And then going on the drawing back to the teaching of the lesson and the principle evoked. So for improvement, I think no, not necessarily improvement, but I think the principles were invoked proficiently because creative writing is a broad lesson and it contained many open-ended questions. So the learners were engaging and they were able to participate as there is no wrong or right answer. So, which is why I think that we were very much successful in invoking the principles as the learners were participating, right?
Yeah.
And then, okay, however, in the body, I think we could have added the acquiring proficiency requires engagement by maybe having the teacher explaining that a story has the beginning, the middle, and the end. And had after the teacher had created the story using that very same picture, we could have maybe given the learners an opportunity to share, like take turns and try to tell the story orally before writing down to the like as an activity
Mm.
for the teacher to see if for us to see if so yeah i think I think that's that
Yep.
for the yeah. And now reflection on competencies for a fast changing world.
Um.
Okay, I'll do it and then you do the other one.
Which other one?
The last one. The last lesson.
Okay. So the competencies that were infused were communication, critical thinking, creativity, and collaboration. So in the introduction phase, communication and collaboration were infused in such a way that come in. were infused in such a way that learners were involved in a question and answer, or rather a discussion about Christmas Day, like how they spend it, um, and critical thinking and creativity were infused when learners had to think of sentences that they can make based on the things that they do on Christmas Day. And then from the sentences, they had to be able to tell in a story format. Like having them to think critically about concepts and create meaningful sentences and stories is how the competencies were infused. So in the body of the lesson, communication was infused in such a way that learners had to answer the questions that we posed to them. The questions were about what? Were about the things they saw on the picture. I mean, the things that they could see on the picture. So basically, the teacher was asking them what they could see on the picture and they had to respond. So creativity in the body of the lesson was infused when learners had to think of the story that they could come up with by looking at that picture. So in the conclusion of the lesson, uh, critical thinking was infused in such a way that uh, learners had to look at the picture and tell a story about what they see, like as in write the story down, their own story. Um, the other question says, how successful do you think the lesson was in achieving the aim? The aim of the lesson was, what was the aim of the lesson? Oh, the aim of the lesson was learners able to create. Oh, sorry. The aim of the lesson was to teach learners how to create a meaningful story based on picture reading or reading pictures. I think it was successful because learners were able to create a story. They were able to write their own story by looking at the picture. And the second question, how did the learners respond to the lesson? The learners responded well. They were paying attention. They were engaged in the lesson. I think everything worked well during this lesson. Yeah. So can we move on to the third lesson?
We can move to the next.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the other one? Okay. Reflective is a grade three mathematics data handling. So we we elicited the learner's prior knowledge by invoking, of course, the first principle. We learn or understand new things by relating them to what we already know. So this was done when this was infused in a way where the teacher asked the learners open-ended question like, what is data? When do we collect data? Why is it important that we collect data? So this was for the teacher to see if the learners had a background knowledge about data handling, about data and how we handle data. And then in the body of the lesson, we invoked principle 5, which says learning requires cognitive engagement, which is supported through moderate challenges that elicit interest. This was addressed where the learners had to represent information on the bar graph using information collected from them in a way which it it did elicit interest because the learners were engaged and they felt as owners of their learning. And then the moderate challenges were presented in a way that they had to do two more examples on their own for the teacher to see if the learners are able to represent information on a paragraph on their own. And then in the conclusion, we invoked acquiring proficiency skill requires repeated cognitive engagement. So this was addressed where the learners had to practice what they have learned by engaging in the question and answer method that came after the body, and then they had to complete a worksheet about data handling. So, drawing on the teaching of the lesson, I think we have managed to evoke these principles yet again in an average level. So, to improve the lesson, I think in the body, the teacher could have used physical objects to make the lesson much more of a practical lesson, like having the learners in pairs or groups and then sort the data on their own. For example, we could have maybe had building blocks with different colors, and then having the learners sort them according to those colors, and then represent the data maybe on their whiteboards or scrapbooks as a practice. And still, we could have okay, and that could have maybe led us to infusing the cognition and emotions are intertwined principle, because in this way it was going to evoke positive emotions that would have encouraged more participation. Yeah, but however, I think the lesson was quite great, but just need the teachers maybe to use practical activities as much as they can, because we had arguments during the collation of data. Others loved this color more than the others. Others wanted a color that was not even there. So if we can maybe give them the practical objects, like they have no choice matter to use what they are given.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the practical things.
Yes. So competencies for a fast changing world. We In all parts of the lesson, communication evoked hand in hand, worked in hand with collaboration, because like all parts of the lesson, the learners were engaged in the classroom discussion, question and answer method. So as in the beginning, they had to answer individually or work in pairs what is data, what
Yeah.
data handling, and give ways in which we can use to collect data. And then we also invoke critical thinking and creativity in the body of lesson, whereby they had to analyze the data that they were given and be able to represent it. Creativity was then addressed by the learner's ability to analyze the data, look at the values, and try to have a visual picture of how the bar graph will look like. And then in the conclusion, critical thinking was also infused, where the learners had to complete a worksheet based on data handling as they had to apply the content that they have learned. We also infused metacognition, whereby the learners had to evaluate their answers by looking at how others would have completed their data representation. What representation, and the teacher asking follow-up questions like, why did you do it like that? Why, to see if the learners really understand what was expected from them. Therefore, I think we were very much successful in infusing the competencies as the learners were communicating and collaborating with one another, gave creative examples of collecting data. Metacognition was very much encouraged.
Yep.
And what does the last one says? The aim of the lesson.
What was the aim of the lesson again?
The aim of the lesson. Oh, I don't have the lesson plan with me. I think the aim of the lesson was to teach learners how to represent
Data in a graph.
on a paragraph. Yes. So I
Yeah.
think we were able to
Yeah,
achieve the aim of the lesson
do it.
because the learners were able to complete the activity that was given to them, and
They were
I
able
think
to do the back
8% of them passed. They responded very well to the lesson. They were participating throughout, as mentioned, given another chance, we should have made examples of collecting data using physical objects again for the learners like to physically engage with the content. However, I think the teaching methods were effective and we were able to achieve the aim and the objectives.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we are done.
So you can stop recording. Yeah.
Um, Stop recording.